Good morning and welcome to DSC1630, the Introductory Financial Mathematics video sessions. My name is Adil Immelman and I'll be your video lecturer for the course of the lectures. Today we're going to look at interest in general and on simple interest. That means Chapter 2, Section 1. Now firstly, what is interest? Interest is money that you pay or earn for the use of somebody else's money. Let's say you go to the bank and you ask them that you need to have money to buy some or other thing. Let's say you want to buy a house or a car and you would like to borrow money from them. Okay, they will give you the money, but then for that use of that money, they want something back because it's their money, so they want something back. And that's what we call interest. Now interest is always noted as a percentage of the money that you deposit or borrow. And depending on how you calculate that interest, give way to different types of interest. Now the first one we're going to look at today is simple interest. Now, as I said, it is a percentage of what you borrow or what you ask for or what you deposit into the bank account, and that we call the principal value. So let's say you ask for, let's just activate our ruler quickly. Okay. Let's say you ask the bank for 10,000 Rand, right? And they say, okay, you can get it, but your interest rate is 10% per year, right? That means in 1 year, you will pay 10% of the 10,000 Rand for interest, right? So we would take the 10,000 Rand and we will multiply it by 10%. But remember, what does 10% mean? 10 divided by 100, right? So a percent means how many pieces out of 100. So it's 10 over 100. Right, and that will give you the value of 1,000 Rand. So each year you will be paying 1,000 Rand. So the 10% or your interest, the percentage, is calculated using your principal value that you've borrowed or invested into the bank account. Now this is easy enough if it was for 1 year. But what now if it's for a longer period or shorter period? So your interest, if it's for a year, it was easy enough. You've also got to add the time period. Why? Because the interest is for 1 year. So depending on the time that you invested, that will give us another answer then for our 1,000 Rand. If it's for 2 years, it will be 2,000. Why? Because our time period will then be 2. If it was just for 1 year, our time period would have been 1, and that would have given us 1,000 Rand. Right. So if we use symbols to calculate that, we would say our interest, I, is equal to P, our principal value, times R, that is our interest rate per year, times T, our time period. So P, what is P? We said our principal value, the value that you deposit or invest. R is our interest rate as a percentage, right? And T is then the time period, or you can call it the term of your loan or the term of your investment. Now, this is how simple interest is calculated. Interest is calculated once, right? And then what do we pay back? Or what do we get out at the end of the day? It's then the interest plus that amount that you borrowed or that you invested. So what you pay back, we call it the future value or accumulative sum, S, is equals to your principal value plus the interest. Right. So that you will be paid back or get back from the bank at the end of the time period. Now, if you think of I we've denoted by PRT. Right, now if we take, in this term there's a P and that also a P, so if you take out a P as a common factor, what is left of the first term is 1, plus the second one is R times T. And this is then how we calculate the future value, or the amount that we will get back from the bank or pay the bank at the end of the time period, is then equal to P1 plus RT. And that is how simple interest is calculated. So we've only got one principal value that we deposit or receive. It's the percentage of the present principal value P. There's the formula on the board on our PowerPoint. I equals PRT, with P being the principal or the present value now, R is the interest rate, and T is the time. Now, while we're at it, I just want to emphasize T. Guys, T must always be in years. Why? Because your interest rate R is in years, per year. So T must also be in years. Now, what happens if I say I'm investing it for, let's say, 10 weeks? Will my T be 10? No, because in that instance, it's 10 weeks. What are we looking for? We are looking for a yearly time period. Now, if we think of a year in total, right? A year has got how many weeks? In total, 52 weeks. If that is 1 year, right? So in this instance, I'm just working with a piece of that 52. So if I want to put or use a yearly time period, I need to change the 10 to a fraction of the year. And that will then be 10 pieces of a total of 52. So very important, your time period must always be expressed as per year, or pieces per year, if I can call it that. Let's look at another example. Let's say I'm investing it for 8 months. What will my T be? 8. No, that's wrong. That's the same like we had there with the 10. 8 isn't years, 8 is months, so we need to change it. How many months in a year? 12. So if we're working with 8, only 8 pieces of the total of 12, your T becomes 8 over 12 and not 8. Be careful, guys. This is very, 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 very important. Your T must always be expressed as years. Okay, we looked at the accumulated future value, S, and I've showed you that S is equals to P1 plus RT. Now, just for interesting sake, we're using R as our interest rate. You will find in some textbooks that instead of R, they use I. It's the same thing. Remember, these little letters are just little boxes or placeholders for your values. So to generalize it, we use alphabetic characters, S, P, R, T, that's got a specific value normally appointed to them. So remember, R can also be expressed as I, and they call it the simple interest rate in this instance. Now, very easily, if we then want a future value, we take the present value and we multiply it then by 1 plus RT. Our interest, we call that part the interest component. Now, what if I need to calculate P or R, for instance, or T? What do I do with my formula? And that's what we say, we manipulate or change the formula so that whatever character or whatever value we want to calculate, that specific value is then the subject of the formula. Now let's say we want P, we want to calculate P, then we need to write it P equals to something. Now how do we do that? Okay, the P we want on its own, so we want to take away the 1 plus RT. Now because it's P times 1 plus RT, to take that away, we divide on this side, that will cancel out. But because of the equal sign, whatever we do on the one side, we need to do on the other side as well. So if we take that as S divided by 1 plus RT, will then be equals to P. Right. Now because of the equal sign on that side and that side, we can change it around. It's the same as P equals to S1 minus RT. Right, because of the equal sign there. So if I want to calculate it P, the present value, I will just take my future value, or the amount that I have to pay back, divided by your interest component, 1 plus RT. Right, now how would I know if I'm working with simple interest or when I need to use that specific formula? We look for what we call the ID words. And as we go along, you will every time see I would emphasize the ID words that we use. So in this instance, the moment you see the word simple interest or simple interest rate, you don't think further, you write down your formula S equals P1 plus RT, because we're working with simple interest. As we go along into the next sections and the other videos, you will see we get different other type of interest calculations that we're going to use. Now, how do I calculate that formula? We use our normal calculator mode. At this stage, with your calculator, you haven't touched the financial keys yet. Only later on we will be using that. At the moment, to work out any simple interest calculations, you will use your normal mode of your calculator. Right, now something that's very important throughout the whole book or the whole textbook or the guide that you wanted is timelines. Now what is a timeline? A timeline is something to help you to work out your time period or your term and to actually visually see what the problem is you're working with. So we all know that a picture is much better than words. So what we do is we draw a timeline to indicate the time we were working with, the money that go into that maybe we're investing or borrowing, and the amount that we get out at the end of the day. So it's the time flow as well as then what we call our money flow. So on our timeline is a straight line indicating time, and on the left-hand side you normally have now, or the time period that you start off with, and to your right will be then the years. Let's say, for instance, 6 years. So as we go along the line, we increase the time to the right. Right. On the left of now is then maybe past time. 3 months ago, 6 years ago, will be on the left side of now, and to the right, your future value. So now, right is then your future time, and left is your previous time. Also, what we indicated on our timeline is money flowing in. Let's say that will then be our present value because it's now, and maybe money flowing out will be our future value S. Also, what we put on a timeline is our interest rate. Our interest rate, depending, let's say, our interest rate is, let's say, 10%, right? And our time period then, depending from where to where are you working, let's say they give you your present value, and they want your future value, then your time period will be from here all the way to there. That will be your time period. Right. So very important, your timeline give you sort of a summary of the problem you're working with. And it's very important, guys, that when you start a problem, we look at it just now, that you always draw a timeline to help you indicating or help you determine your time period. And do you need S or do you need P? What is given to you? A price here or an amount here or an amount there? So that will help you also to understand your question better. The timeline then, very, very important. As I said previously, your time period T is also very important for your calculation. It must always be expressed as years. Now let's look at our first question. An investment of 1,000 Rand is made now. Determine the value of the investment after 6 months, if simple interest of 6% per year is applicable. Now, where do I start with a problem? What do I do? How do I solve a problem? Now, very important is what I call my cake recipe, right? It's a way or approach to a question, guys, that really helps you to make a question much easier. Now, the first thing that I indicate there is normally read through your question and try and find that identification word of the problem. So you need firstly to ID the type of problem you're working with. Secondly, you will draw a timeline of that situation and you fill in all your specific values that you have or that was given to you on your timeline. Now, together with the identity words or ID words as I call them, you write down your formula as well. Then you go back to the question or to your timeline and you substitute those values into your formula. If you need to, you manipulate that formula, meaning changing it around so that one of the other variables or your unknown variable is the subject of the formula. And lastly then, you use your calculator to solve the unknown. So guys, this is the cake recipe to approach a question. Now let's look how we would apply it to our specific problem that we had just now. So we firstly read through the question and we're looking for the ID words. Right. An investment of 1,000 Rand is made now. The value of the investment after 6 months, if simple interest of 16% per year is applicable, will be. Now, up to now, we only had one ID word, remember, and that's simple interest. And in this case, there's the simple interest word. So at least we're knowing we're working with simple interest. The method of simple interest calculation is applicable to this. So we write down our formula, S equals P 1 plus RT. Right. Secondly, we draw our timeline of the situation, right? Remember, a line, right? This is now. Okay, let's go back to our problem. Sorry, let's just get one more. And investment of 1,000 Rand now. So we know we're investing 1,000 Rand here, right? Is made now. Determine the value of the investment after 6 months. So we know after 6 months, we need this value here, the future value, we don't know what it is. If simple interest of 6%, so 16%, sorry, per year is applicable. Right, so from this picture, actually, we can already see that's a value, there's our or there's our P, and we know this is the present value. Why? Because it's now, right? It's now, there's the future over there. This is the principal value, P is that. So if we look at our formula, we already know our P value, we know our R value. S we don't know, that's the one we need to calculate. But what is T? T is we're investing it from now till 6 months. So this whole period is our T value. And is it equal to 6 only? No. Why? T must always be in years. And what do we have? 6 months. So we need to change months to years, meaning we need to, a fraction 6 months is a fraction of a total year of 12 months, so it's 6 over 12. Why 12? Because there's 12 months in 1 year, and we're just working with 6 pieces, so it's 6 over 12, or a half if you want to work with that. So there we know what is our T value. Now I can go back and substitute it into our formula and get to an answer. So let's just look at our simple interest. There's our timeline. Right, I've gone back and identified my variables, the values of my different little boxes, if I can call it that, my S, P, R, and T boxes. There's my formula. In this instance, I don't have to manipulate the formula because S is the value that I want, and it's alone on one side. It's the subject of the formula, and I can solve my value. Now you can use your calculator to solve the unknown. Use my normal mode, starting from left to right, enter it. Just be very careful of your brackets. Remember to put your brackets in, and your answer is 1,060 Rand. Meaning, if I invest 1,000 Rand now, I'll have 1,060 available after 6 months. Okay, this was easy enough. Let's look at something else. Remember, I said T must be in years. Right. Now, sometimes we don't work with months or weeks. We might need to work with days. So I would, for instance, say I'm investing it on the 4th of July, and I'm going to take it out of the bank, my bank account, on the, let's say, 8th of October. Right. So in that instance, we're working with literally days and not with years or not with months. So how do I change, or how do I count the number of days? Now, if you can remember when you were smaller, your mom said you will use your fingers to count the number of days, right? But luckily, we've changed. Instead of using our fingers, we can use the number of days table. Now, how does it work? A number of days table, you will see it in Appendix C of your study guide, is they've taken the first day of the month and say, of the year, 1st of January, and said that is day number 1. Then the second is day number 2, and they've counted or given each day of the year a number. And now remember, in a year there's 365 days. So each day has got a number, and all that we need to do is, if we know a certain date number, we can subtract it from another date in the future to get the difference of days in between those 2 days. So what they've done is they've included the number of each day of the year in your Appendix C, and that gives you then, let's look at a bigger example. There's an example there on your PowerPoint. if you look at it in your rows down, going down, you will have the days, and across you will have the months. Right. Now, if, for instance, I want to calculate the number of days between the 7th of April and the 4th of May, all you need to do is go back and we'll first look at, let's say, the 7th of April. The 7, if you go across with the orange line and up, down from April, you will get the 7th of April is date number 97 in a total number of 365. So it's the 97th day of the year, if we can call it almost that. The same with the 4th of May. Again, the day you go across in the row and down in your columns on May would give you 124. Right. So if we want to know how many days are there between the 7th of April and the 4th of May, we would just subtract those two values from each other, and that will give you 27 days. Now, if you still want to use your fingers, you're welcome. But as I said, you, especially if the term is very long, you might get confused. And if you use your fingers, remember, you count the first day, but never the last day. Okay. That's just a rule that they're using. Now let's look at the example again. An amount of 4,317 and 26 cents was borrowed on the 5th of May at a simple interest rate of 15% per year. Determine the value of the loan on the 16th of August of the same year. Right. Now again, what's my cake recipe? Firstly, I'm looking for that ID word in my problem. So I read through it, and what jumps out of it is actually simple interest rate, right? Because you know now, that's the ID word that I'm looking for when I'm working with simple interest. So the first word is simple interest, so I don't think twice. I know S equals P1 plus RT. Right, what's the next steps? I draw my timeline. Right. An amount was borrowed on the 5th of May, right? And where do I end? The 16th of August. What do I know about my interest rate? Is 15% per year, right? And I've borrowed 4317,26 here, and I want to know what is the value of the loan over here. So here I've got a principal value, right? What do I need? I need a future value that I don't know the amount of. Happy with that? Right, so I don't know my S value. I know what's my P value, right? I know my R value, but what is my time value? My time value is from 15th of May to the 16th of August. Right, so either I can start 5 May, 6 May, 7 May, 8. That will take quite a long time to get to the 16th of August. So what's lovely is I can make use of my date table to calculate T. Right. Now, if you go back, let's see if we can find, there's the date table more or less. If we look at the 5th of May, there's May, and there's the 5th, is the value 125, right? So we can put the date value in brackets, 125, and we're looking for the other date value of 16th of August. August going down, right, it's right here at the bottom. It will be the next line on our slide, right, that I can't read from that specific slide. But if you look at August and you go down, 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 you will find the value right at the end of that table, right? And it is 228. 228. Right, so how do I get the value of T? The value of T will then be 228, the difference between 228 and 125, right? But that will give me days. Can I just use t equals to days? No, remember what I said, it must be in years. So what do we need to divide by? We need to divide by 365, the number of days in 1 year. Remember previously, when we had months, we divided by the number of months in a year, which is 12. In this instance, we've got days, so we divide by 365. Right, now if we substitute that back into our formula, we will then get an answer of 4,500. We use our normal mode of our calculator, so we've invested or 4,317 and 26 cents. What did we get out? 4,500 rand. Can you see again? I'm working with my cake recipe. I ID it, I draw my timeline, write my formula, substitute my values, and at the end, use my calculator to get to an answer. Now, sometimes, remember I said to get S or P, it's easy enough to manipulate. But when we get to something like we want to solve T or we want to solve the interest rate, it gets a little bit harder to get to an answer, right? Because we need to manipulate that formula of ours. Now, if you can't remember how to manipulate an equation, please guys, go back to the YouTube. You all got YouTube videos. And go and look and have a look at solving of equations. Just put in the search solving of equations. And that will take you again through the basic steps of solving or changing the subject of a formula. Now let's look at the one where we've got S. I just want to repeat it, 1 plus RT. And let's say we want to solve the value of T. That means we want T alone on its one side and solve then that formula. Now firstly, we need to take something over to the other side. Let's start with P. Because it's P times 1 plus RT, right? We don't put the multiplication sign in there, but it means the bracket 1, it's multiplication. What do I do to get the P away on that side? We divide by, we do the opposite, right? So we would divide that side by P, but the moment we're doing that, because of the equal sign, remember, equal, so whatever we do on the one side, what will happen? It will do that. So we must do the same on the other side to get it back again to the balance, the equal. So we need to divide by P as well. So S divided by P gives us that P and that P cancels out is equal to 1 plus RT. Right, next step is we'll take that 1 away. It's a positive 1, right? So what would I do to get it away? I will subtract it on that side. So I will say minus 1. Because the 1 plus 1 minus 1 falls away. So I always do the opposite to get it away. So minus 1, 1 minus 1 will give you 0. But again, you need to do it on the other side as well. SP minus 1 is equal to 1 plus RT minus 1. You can take the brackets away because it's 1 plus RT. It doesn't matter if there's brackets or not. In that instance, that and that cancels out. So I've got SP minus 1 is equal to R times T. Right. I want T, so I need to take away the R. In that instance, it's R times T, right? What is the opposite calculation? Divide by. So if I divide that side by R, I need to do the same on this side, right? Remember, we need to do it for that whole divided by R. The R's would cancel out on the other side, and we will be left with S minus P minus 1 divided by R equals to T. Again, because it's the equal sign, doesn't matter if it's on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, you can turn it around. T is equal to S divided by P minus 1 divided by R. Right, so if we need to solve our T value, we can then start with our simple interest formula, manipulate it so that its T is our subject of our formula. Now, right, you could have used from the beginning the values and used the same manipulation to get to the answer as well. I've just here used our little box holders or our T's and our S and our P's. Right. Now let's look at another example. Then, what was the value of the 1,000 Rand in question 1 3 months ago? Right. So remember, let's just look at our question 1. We had 1,000 Rand here. Okay, remember, and it was 6 months there that we had to calculate. That was question 1. Right. Now they're asking us, what was the value of the 1,000 Rand 3 months ago? So it means here 3 minus 3 almost, right? Ago. So I want the value here. Do I have anything to do with this here at the moment? No, why not? Because I'm just saying I'm working with the value of the 1,000 Rand here and the same interest rate, and I want the value here. Right. So again, what are we working with? If we go back to question 1, let's quickly just go back to question 1. An investment of 1,000 Rand is made. No, determine the value of the means after 6 months. That was question 1, right? And the interest rate R was equal to 16%. But now they want the value of that 1,000 Rand 3 months ago, right? So what am I working with? I'm working with the timeline, that piece of timeline there, right? So the 1,000 Rand and this value here at 3 months, which value is now P and which value is S, meaning present value and future value. Now that depends on what part of our timeline we're working with. If you think just now, we worked with from here to there. So in that instance, the 1,000 Rand was my present value, and this question mark was the future value that I wanted. But now in this case, we're working with this 1,000 Rand and we want the value here. So we are working with that piece there. So it means, is the 1,000 Rand for that part of the timeline S or is it P? And this one that you need to calculate, is that S or P? Now if you look, I always say put your hands on the timeline. And then you can see that this 1,000 Rand, we're working with that part. So the 1,000 Rand actually for this calculation is S. Although it was in the first question the P value, because we worked with that part, now we're working with this part over here. S is your 1,000 and the P is the value we don't know. Guys, that's why I say the timeline is so important to help you determine, is this 1,000 Rand now the present value, is it the future value, what is we working with? And that is then, what do we need is the principal value. We're working with simple interest rate, so we know that is our formula. So we want P, so S divided by 1 plus RT will give me my principal value. Now let's go back to our question and our solution on our PowerPoint. Right, so we know it's simple interest. Our timeline, there's our timeline, and we need R at 3 months ago. So as I said, how do we know if 1,000 Rand, although it's now, why isn't it the P value? Because the time that we're working with, if you look at the timeline I've given you there, a red line from now to 3 months ago, that is the part of the timeline that we're working with. So for that part, the 1,000 Rand is the future value. and we want the present value of the 1,000 rand. Right. And because it's 3 months, we don't use 3 as it is. Why not? Because our interest rate is per year. We need our time period to be years as well. So it's 3 divided by 12 because it's months. And if you work out your p-value then using your calculator, it's 96154. So can you see back in time, what do we see here? Back in time, the value now becomes less. It's 96154. But when we moved it forward in time, it became more. Right. Now, what I've tried to explain with this question 1 and 3 to you as well is what we call the word time, or the concept time value of money. And that's what, if an investment moves forward in time, right, a value, it becomes more over time in future. But that 1,000 rand becomes less if we move it back in time. So investment has different values on different dates. So 1,000 rand today isn't worth 1,000 rand in 10 years' time, right? It's got a bigger value. So moving money forward in time, right, we're actually calculating a what? A future value, right? And what do? We take our principal value and we multiply by the interest component, right? On this slide there you can see 1,000 rand, 1 plus 0.16 times 6 over 12. We multiplied by the interest component. If we moved it back, what were we calculating actually? A present value of that 1,000 rand. So we divide by the interest component. And if we divide by, we're making something smaller. That's why going back in time, our value becomes smaller. If we're going forward in time, we're multiplying, right? And if we multiply with something, it becomes bigger, so your future value is always bigger. So that's a very important concept that we're going to use from here onwards. The time value of money, what that's saying is investment now isn't the same as investment in the future or in the past. Why? Because of this interest. And we either multiply with the interest component or we divide by the interest component to make it bigger or smaller. So there I've just given you a summary. If we move money forward in time, we're calculating a future value, or S. We're actually inflating or multiply the present value by the factor 1 plus RT. And then when we move money back, we deflate or divide the future value amount by the factor 1 plus RT. Can you remember there? But we can also say multiply the amount by the factor to the power of minus 1. 1 plus RT is minus 1. Now guys, remember, go back to your maths at school. Can you remember when we had something like 1 over x, 1 divided by x? There goes my microphone again. 1 over x. That you could have written as x to the power of minus 1. Right? Now the same here. If we've got p divided by 1 plus rt, we can also write it as p times 1 plus rt to the power of minus 1. So that minus actually just means divide by. Right. So in the guide, you sometimes will see the negative sign there. It's just another way of writing divide by 1 plus RT. Right. That concludes then the first part of chapter 2 on simple interest. Guys, I want you to go back to your study guide, go through the theory, and again all the examples in your guide. Try and work it out yourself. If you've got questions, please email me immediately and ask the questions that you would like to ask me. I will respond to you. And then if you finish with that, go to your additional exercises that are available on my UNISA under additional resources. There's many questions on this chapter, and you will find the solutions with them as well. Go and practice, practice, practice. Remember, practice makes perfect. Thank you and see you soon.